Recently, I asked my community for grounded topics they would like to see covered in videos on this channel, and one of the most popular was a mutation tier list. In this video, I'll be ranking every mutation currently in grounded. Before we begin, I want to thank my channel members, especially the Overseer91 and Grey Knight who help make videos like this possible. Let's get started. There are currently 26 mutations in grounded, and what we're going to do is we're going to go through all 26 of them. I'm going to briefly give you a description of what they are just in case you're not aware, and then I'm going to tell you where I rank them and why I rank them where I do. First up, we're going to go through them in the order that they appear down here. Now, this is the order they appear on the wiki. I'm not exactly sure if they appear in this exact order in our UI of the game, but this is the order they were on the wiki, which is where all the descriptions are I'm getting them from. So first up, we're going to have Meat Shield. The first three are going to be purchasable from Burgle for 3,000 raw science. All the other 23 are unlocked via various actions. So first up is going to be Meat Shield. What Meat Shield does is it increases your max health by 50%. Now, when I'm rating these, I'm rating them based on medium mode, which is the mode that I believe probably the super majority of people play on. I will also mention if there's any difference in my rating, if it's for WoW mode. Honestly, for mild, anything I give for medium, mild is going to be the same, although because mild's just much easier. So these are going to be my ratings based on medium. So for Meat Shield, I would say for Meat Shield for me is an S. I use Meat Shield 100% of the time. As soon as I'm able to unlock it, I use it. It is 100% needed in WoW mode if you're not really good at perfect blocking, because you will end up taking a tremendous amount of damage from the insects in it. Even in medium mode early on, when you don't have great armor, or if you're not good at perfect blocking or you miss some blocks, you can easily get 1 or 2 shot by a ladybug, wolf spider, especially the roly-poly. The Meat Shield is going to be really good to use because it gives you 50% more max health. Next up is going to be Buff Lungs. Buff Lungs is similar to Meat Shield, except instead of giving you more max health, it gives you more max stamina. So Buff Lungs will increase your max stamina by 50%. And for me, this is 100% going to be an S as well. These two I pretty much use all the time. As soon as I have them available, they're in my arsenal of mutations. They'll probably be the first two that I use is when I only can use 2 of them. And no matter what mode I'm playing on, I pretty much use these 2 all the time. When anybody asks me like what mutations to use, these are the first 2 I mentioned. I use them all the time, no matter what mode I'm playing on. Although I will say that if you're playing on mild mode, you might not need Meat Shield because the enemies don't do a ton of damage. But if you're new to the game, it might be useful. But for me, Buff Lungs, that extra stamina is going to be huge. The third and last one you can purchase from Burgle currently is Daredevil. And Daredevil, what that does is it reduces your fall damage. And it also says it will... Falls that would normally kill the player will leave you at 1 HP. I have a whole video on that. The only way that actually works is if you fall from a height that would normally kill you and you have 100% HP. If you have less than max HP, you will still die. So that's only going to count. It's only going to keep you alive if you fall from a really high height and you have 100% of your HP. If you have 99% of your HP and you fall, you will die and it won't matter. So I don't ever use Daredevil. The only time it would ever even be useful, in my opinion, would be if you're in the hedge and you don't have a glider. But why would you not have a dandelion glider? They're so easy to get. You can get them as soon as you get the Pebblet Axe. So for me, Daredevil's an F. I never use it. I would never recommend using it. Just equip yourself with a dandelion glider. They're really easy to get. You can get 1 dandelion you cut down will usually give you 3 or 4 of them. So I would never see this being useful. The remaining 23 mutations that are currently in Grounded are all unlocked via various actions. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through them in the order of the first couple we're going to go through are going to be the offensive ones. So they're going to be related to a specific type of weapon or type of offense. And then the rest of them are utilities where they're used for specific situations or other things like that. So first up is going to be Lil Fist. Lil Fist gives you 2 times damage with barehanded attacks. You unlock it by killing 50 creatures with your fist. Now, to be completely honest, I never use this mutation. I do usually unlock it just to have it unlocked. But right now, because there's no unarmed weapons, perhaps in the future if they add boxing gloves or if they add brass knuckles or something, this might be useful. But for me, Lil Fist is just not a good mutation. Even doubling your damage with punching and using it in combination with Truffle Tussle, which we'll talk about later on, it's still not useful. I'm going to put this down here. I'm going to put it above Daredevil, but it's still going to be an F for me. I just don't recommend using it right now under any circumstances. Like I said, if they add some type of unarmed weapon like a boxing glove or something like that, where you actually do more damage with your fist, then maybe it'll be more useful. But right now, I wouldn't even worry about unlocking it because it's just not useful at all. Next offensive one's going to be Chopper. So Chopper gives axe attacks a chance to stagger the target. This is unlocked by killing creatures with an axe. There's 3 phases for it. Each phase will give you a better chance, I think, of staggering. So staggering interrupts the target's current action, and that can mean any actions it's currently doing. If it's running towards you, it'll slow it down. If it's trying to attack you, it'll interrupt it from attacking attacking you. Actually, it won't even slow it down. If it's running towards you and you interrupt and you stagger it, it'll actually stop moving. If it's trying to attack you, it will stop the attack. So this is okay. I don't usually use the axe for offense. In fact, nobody I ever see playing the game really uses the axe. Maybe when they add if they add a tier 3 axe with the next update, this will be more useful. It is okay, but for me, I just don't really use it. So I'm going to put it down here and see. The benefit from it does seem pretty useful, but like I said, not until there's a better weapon in the axe category, so a tier 3 or tier 4, would I even consider using this. Next up is going to be Smasher, similar to Chopper, except this works with hammers. What this does is it gives you a chance to daze your targets. Daze will slow the target's attack speed, so it won't stop them from moving towards you, but it will slow their attack speed. This is unlocked by killing creatures with the hammer, and there are 3 phases for it. Now, right now, you can block cancel with weapons, and the hammer, you can actually, I would basically say, as long as block canceling is in the game, this is going to be more useful than the other weapons like the axe and stuff like that, just because you can do a ton of stun. You can pretty much stun lock your enemies. So I would give this a B right now, just because of the block cancel. If they do remove block cancel, and if you're not familiar, basically what you do is you attack, block, and then attack again. And what it does is it'll stop the animation from your blocking and attacking and just let you basically spam attacks really quickly. It's super useful for, especially with a hammer, when you're farming like acorns, or if you're farming sap, or if you're farming rocks or something like that, or quartzite. You can use it, and you can also use it when you're using it in combat if you're using a hammer. I don't normally use them. I don't usually rely on stun except for when I use the Salt Morningstar, which doesn't benefit from this because it's under the Barbarian mutation. But I do know some people like to use the hammer, and this would definitely, if you're going to use the hammer as your main weapon, especially with that block cancel, I would 100% recommend using Smasher. Next up is going to be Javelineer. Javelineer applies to spears. It is unlocked by killing creatures with spears. It has 3 phases like the others. What it does is it gives you a chance to cripple your target. Cripple will slow the target's movement speed, so it's very similar to the Daze from the Smasher. And I don't normally use spears. Again, the spears only, like some of these other weapons, they only have up to tier 2. The Stinger Spear can be okay. It does give you a little bit of a chance for extra crit damage, higher chance for crit damage, although it's not that great. I know people that like to use the spear. If you're using a spear, I would definitely recommend using this, because if you're able to slow the target's movement speed, you're going to be more likely to get a lot of attacks in, because the spears do a lot of damage and they can attack pretty quickly. But since I don't really use it that often, I'm going to put it down here. I will put it above the I will put it above Chopper under C, but I don't really use spear, so I'm going to put it above Chopper, but still in C below the Smasher. Next one's going to be Assassin. Assassin gives daggers a chance to bleed the target. What bleed does is it inflicts a damage over time on the target. It's similar to poison. Now, if you've ever tried to experiment with the poison or the bleed effect, it is very minimal. It is such a small amount that what'll end up happening is you will normally eliminate the target you're attacking before it even really makes that much of a difference. So in my opinion, that bonus is really not that great. And of course, it's like the others. You have to kill different creatures using a dagger 50, 100, or 150 times, unlock 50, 100, or 200 times, unlock 3 phases. I don't really ever use this. I'm going to put this down here. I guess it will be slightly better than Chopper, but I mean, it just does such little damage. If it gets buffed in the future, I would consider moving it up. But for right now, I'm just going to put it under C. Next, we're going to have a Sharpshooter. Sharpshooter, you unlock it by getting kills with the bows, either the Sprig Bow, the Insect Bow, or the Crow Crossbow. What this does is it gives a chance to root the targets. Root temporarily halts the target's movement entirely. From my experience, the game doesn't tell you what the chance of these things happening are. I don't know if it's like 10%, or maybe it goes up with each phase. But when I was doing some testing with the bow not that long ago, I seemed to end up rooting, like I was using it against mosquitoes. It was proccing pretty consistently. And because I would say I use bows more frequently than most other weapons in the game, I use it, other than the Antlion Greatsword right now, the only other weapon I normally use is the Insect Bow or the Crow Crossbow. I prefer the Insect Bow. So I'm going to give this an A, because if you like ranged attacking, you're going to definitely want to put Sharpshooter in there, because there's nothing better than when a mosquito is chasing you and you hit it with the Sharpshooter or Mutation equipped, and it roots it and just makes it go straight down, and you can just sit there and light it up before it even has a chance to recover and come after you. Next on our list is going to be Barbarian. Barbarian gives club attacks a chance to enter rage. What that does is attack damage is increased, but you're not able to perfect block. This is unlocked by getting kills with the different clubs in the game. There's 3 phases for it. Now, this one has 2 downsides. One, you're not going to be able to perfect block. So if you're good at perfect block and you rely on that, you're not going to want to use this. And number 2, it doesn't even proc all the time. Unlike the others that I guess it's like the others in that it's a chance for it to proc, but like for me, I used it and it didn't seem to proc that often. I don't know, maybe you have better experience with it, but I do use clubs sometimes. I use the Salt Morningstar, but I would never consider using this because I'd rather have the ability to perfect block. So for me, Barbarian, I'm probably going to put it down here. I'm going to put it as the highest C right now, but it does do more damage. Although, in my opinion, the trade-off for not being able to perfect block is just not worth using it. Next up is going to be Blade Master. What Blade Master does is sword attacks have a chance to restore durability of the weapon, and this, of course, is unlocked by getting kills with the swords. Now, if you're using the Antlion Greatsword, you might want to use this because it will give you a chance to restore your weapon. From my experience, when I have this equipped, I don't normally have to repair my weapon. That's in medium mode. I was watching Original Ryan play in WoW mode. He was having Blade Master equipped quite often, and it didn't seem like it was doing as much repair. It could have just been luck or not. I don't know. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, for me, this is going to be a B. I'm going to put it above Smasher. In medium mode, like I said, it tends to repair your sword. Now, once you've played long enough, it doesn't really matter. You're going to probably get enough parts to repair everything because you can just farm the parts you need. But when you're first starting out, if you don't want to have to repair your sword, you might want to use Blade Master just so your sword repairs itself. And like I said, I'm not sure if it works differently in the different difficulties, but from what I see in medium mode, it seems to work pretty consistently. But in WoW mode, from what I saw, it might not be as good. Next up is going to be Parry Master, and that refunds stamina on perfect block. Now we're moving on to the ones that are not weapon specific. These are utility or they're unlocked by other means. So to unlock the Parry Master, you're going to have to get perfect blocks 20, 60, or 100 times. Those are the 3 phases. And it refunds stamina on perfect block, amount increasing with each phase. If you're good at perfect blocking, you honestly should get good at perfect blocking because once you learn how to perfect block, it's just going to make combat so much easier. Especially, you have to perfect block on low mode. On medium mode, I would definitely recommend learning how to perfect block because even when you're fully geared up, if you're just being sloppy and not paying attention and you don't get perfect blocks or don't block at all, you can end up taking critical damage. So if you ever plan on playing on low mode, perfect blocking is going to be a big thing. And I would definitely recommend equipping Parry Master because it'll give you your stamina back. So we're going to put this up here to A because for me, stamina is always a big thing. If you pair this with the Koi Scale armor, where you're able to just get a better chance of getting perfect blocks, it's just going to be super useful. But in any case, Parry Master is a really good mutation, and I would recommend using it, especially when you're fighting tougher insects, where you might have to do a lot of attacks to kill them, because you definitely don't want to run out of stamina while you're in combat. Grassmaster is next, and what this does is it increases chopping efficiency by 25, 50, and 100%, and it refunds stamina used when harvesting grass. You get this by chopping down 50, 200, or 500 blades of grass, although you can also unlock Grassmaster by destroying grass. That means if you throw a Brat Burst or a Splat Burst into a densely populated area where there's a lot of grass and it destroys the grass, it will actually count towards your number of this. So keep that in mind when you're trying to unlock it. For me, Grassmaster, if you're chopping down grass to build, it could be useful. But other than that, I guess when you're chopping down weeds, it might be useful. But in the grand scheme of things, how often are you going to be doing that? And at least, now I know this is just my opinion, other people might disagree. Building in the game right now, to me, is mostly cosmetic. I do it just to have fun. I don't really find it's not really that useful. You don't have to build. In the future, if building is like super necessary, Grassmaster might become more important. But for me, I'm going to put this down here in the D category just because you're only really going to use it when you're building something. And how often are you actually doing that? If you're playing the normal game, playing through the story, doing the Burgle quest, more often you're not going to have Grassmaster equipped. And honestly, a lot of times when I'm chopping down grass, I completely forget that I need this. And if you have a higher level, if you have the insect axe like at level 5, and you put on coup de grass, which we'll talk about in a minute, you're just going to chop down the grass much faster anyway. So Grassmaster, it can be useful, but I really don't use it that often, even when I'm playing later game. Now along those lines, next up is going to be Rock Cracker. Rock Cracker is similar to Grassmaster, except it applies to rocks. This increases busting efficiency 25, 50, and 100%. And in order to unlock this, you have to break 25 rocks, 75 rocks, or 100 rocks. I do believe this also, I can't say this, I believe it also works if you're busting other things. For example, acorns and sap, I think, although I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember. But it definitely works this definitely procs when you're harvesting quartzite, and it will work on other things you're busting. So I'm going to put this under C. It's going to be better than I'm going to give it better than Grassmaster. In fact, I'm probably going to put it up here just because harvesting quartzite for upgrading your weapons, harvesting pebblets, harvesting acorns and stuff like that, Rock Cracker, the sap nodes, definitely going to be useful. Mainly, I'm going to give it a C just because of the ability to harvest the quartzite, which if you have Rock Cracker equipped with a level 5 insect hammer, you can usually bust the quartzite on one hit, maybe two if you're unlucky. Next up is going to be Ant Annihilator. Ant Annihilator increases damage to ants 5%, 15%, 25%, and phase 3 will increase damage resistance to ants by 10%. To unlock this, you have to kill 50, 100, or 150 ants for phase 1, 2, and 3. It does work against red ants and black ants. I did do a video on that. It does not work against ant lions, not surprisingly, although some people thought it might because they have the word ant in their name. It does work against black ants and red ants. So honestly, before the black ants were added to the game, I would have said this mutation's not that great. But because the black anthill is actually it can be pretty tough the first time you go in there. I would definitely recommend using this when you're going in there for the first time, and specifically if you're going in to harvest black ant parts for the black ant sword, black ant shield, or the black ant armor. It's going to be super useful. You're going to do a lot more damage. You're going to kill them faster. So I would definitely recommend using this. I'm assuming if the ant queen gets added as a boss and you actually have to attack the ant queen, it'll be useful against her. And who knows, it may or may not be useful against termites. We'll have to see when they get added. We'll definitely be testing that out to see if it's being used against them. But for now, I'm going to put it here in B behind Blade Master and Smasher. Next up is going to be Coup de Grace. This is another one that I pretty much have equipped 100% of the time. This increases your critical hit chance by 10% for phase 1 and 25% for phase 2. You get phase 1 by discovering the 4-leaf clover. You get phase 2 by knocking the 20-sided dice that's up in the Minotaur maze on the picnic table to the 20, and that'll give you phase 2. I'm putting this up here under S. I use this 100% of the time. Like I said, Meat Shield, Buff Lungs, and now Coup de Grace. These are the 3 I use all the time. This also works when you're harvesting things. So if you're chopping down grass, you can get critical hits. If you're breaking anything with a hammer, you can get critical hits. It is super useful. If you pair this up with a level 7 Antlion Greatsword, either Spicy or Mighty, at least on medium mode, you can kill wolf spiders if you get lucky and get a double crit in 2 hits. So it is super useful. It's going to help you take down tougher enemies much faster, because if 1 out of every 4 hits is going to have a chance of being a critical hit does double damage. That is significant, and this I would definitely recommend using this pretty much at all times once you have 3, 4, or 5 mutation slots unlocked. Next one we're going to cover is Juicy. Juicy gives you thirst decrease by 50% slower. It is unlocked by discovering all 5 of the juice boxes. Once you get it, I would say I use this probably half the time. If you're in the sandbox, I would 100% recommend using this, because when you're in the sandbox, your thirst drains much faster. Even if you're not affected by the sizzling effect, you are going to, I think it's sweaty or something like that. There's a status that gets put on you. So you definitely want to make sure you're using it if you're inside the sandbox. If you're running all over the yard doing resourcing, like harvesting resources, harvesting bugs or something like that, you might want to have it equipped just so you're not constantly having to go look for water or have to drink out of your canteen. So for me, Juicy is going to get an A. I'm going to put it behind Parrymaster and Sharpshooter, but I definitely use this on a regular basis. It's one of the ones I have in my, it's probably in my top 5 or 6 where I'm using it. Actually, you know what? I probably would say I'd probably put it above these, because it's useful in pretty much all situations. You're not always using Sharpshooter, and you might not always use Parrymaster. So I'm going to put up here as the highest A, because like I said, I have it equipped most of the time. Next up we're going to cover is Natural Explorer. This gives you increased sprint speed of 3%, 6%, and 10%. It's unlocked by discovering landmarks, 5 for phase 1, 20 for phase 2, and 50 for phase 3. After the Hot and Hazy update, you could finally unlock phase 3. Prior to that, you could only unlock the first 2. I don't usually use Natural Explorer. I used to use it all the time, but the fact that it only gives you at max level only 10% extra movement speed, to me, since we only have 5 mutation slots at the maximum, if we could have this as a passive, I would use it all the time. But because we can't have it as a passive and it actually takes up a mutation slot, I don't really use it that often. I'd end up probably saying I'm going to put it under the C. I'll put it up here. I guess I'll put it at the high C, just because it's going to be useful in more situations than the rest of these. But overall, I almost never equip this. I'd rather just put on aphid slippers and run faster. To me, it's just like I don't find it useful enough to take up one of my 5 precious mutation slots, because I'm not going to trade it out for any of the 4 I've already talked about: Meat Shield, Buff Lungs, Coup de Grace, or Juicy. So that's where I put that. Martine's kind of similar to Natural Explorer. It does make you move faster. You get this by discovering 3 underwater landmarks. It increases your underwater oxygen time by 10% and increases your swim speed by 15%. It's pretty much only useful when you're inside of the koi pond. You're not going to use it in the flooded areas, because they're not deep enough. And even in the koi pond, you don't have to use it. I would probably say I would rather use this instead of using the fin flops, just because the fin flops give you no defense. So I'd rather have some kind of defensive leg piece and use this. It's also it's useful for using inside of the koi pond. So I'm gonna give this a C. I'll probably put it here right behind Rockcracker, but ahead of Barbarian, because I really don't use these that much. So if you're in the koi pond, I would use it. Other than that, it's not really that useful. So that's that. Next up is going to be Cardio Fan. I did a video on Cardio Fan. This is increases your stamina regen by 10, 15, and 20%. And you have to unlock it by exhausting yourself. There's 3 different phases. It's 100, 250, and then I think 500 times for the 3rd phase. For me, Cardio Fan is just, I'm going to put it above the others down here in F, but it is an F. I never use this. Once I did the testing and realized how insignificant the stamina regeneration is, especially if you're using spider armor, which I use 95% of the time right now. Now, maybe in the future it'll be more useful. Unless they buff it, I have no intention of ever using it again. In fact, I'll probably only be unlocking it by accident, because I used to use this all the time. Then once someone mentioned it to me during one of my streams, I think it was when I was fighting the Broodmother, to drop it because it wasn't that great. And I was like, okay, I dropped it. I ended up beating her much easier than I thought I was going to. And then after that, I did some testing on it. Like I said, I did a whole video on it. If you're interested, I'll leave a link for that in the description down below. If you're interested why I don't like Cardio Fan specifically, that's why I'm putting down here in F. Next on our list is going to be Reliable Friend. Reliable Friend increases player revive speed by 15, 25, and 40%. You unlock it by reviving your friends 5, 15, or 30 times for the different phases. There's not even really much to talk about here. I'm going to put this down here. I'm going to probably put it down here just behind Little Fist, because I'd probably use Little Fist more often. If you're playing solo, you're not even going to unlock this. Right now, multiplayer is really not that great because of the high ping, desync, lag, rubber banding, disconnects, and stuff like that. I guess if you're playing... The only time I've ever actually, I think, equipped this might have been when I did the Broodmother when I was playing with my kids, just so I could revive them faster if they died. But even then, it's kind of like, I don't even use... I almost would never use this. So... I don't know, maybe if you're playing in WoW mode and you have 4 people and it actually runs good, I could consider using it. But for most people, I think, are playing solo, or even if you're playing with 1 or 2 friends, you're probably not going to waste one of your mutation slots with Reliable Friend. Next up is going to be Fresh Defense. This increases resistance to gas and burning damage, and it gives you sizzle rate reduction. This is going to be super useful before you get the Antlion armor when you're in the sandbox, if you go in there during the daytime, because if you do not have this... The only other option is going to be, if you don't have this and you don't have the Antlion armor, your only other option is going to be to eat mint shards, which are not that plentiful, and I wouldn't recommend eating them. I'd rather save them for, well, you can eat them to unlock this, but after that, I would recommend just saving them for making in the mint globs. So I used this the other day, actually, when I was streaming. Instead of using the Antlion armor, I was using this with my spider armor, and I really only had to find shade periodically. I think I went across the entire sandbox like 2 times. I went across it, got all the treasure, killed all the antlions, went and did something else, came back and did the same thing, using Fresh Defense instead of using the Antlion armor. And I never one time ended up getting the sizzle bar completely filled up. So level 3 of this, you unlock it. Level 1 unlocks by eating 1 mint shard. 5 will give you level 2, and then 10 will give you level 3. If you're playing by yourself and you bust open the mint caps, I think it's the ice caps box, that's right by the mysterious machine, you should get enough to unlock level 3. I would recommend using that. It's also useful for fighting against stink bugs, and it's also useful in the haze, and it's also useful in fighting against bombardier beetles when they hit you with the acid. So it's useful in a lot of different situations. So I would put it up here. I'm going to put it up here under B, just because it's useful in a lot of situations. Not 100% of the time, but it is useful in enough situations where it's worth. If you're in the sandbox, you don't want to use the Antlion armor. If you're fighting beetles, fighting stink bugs, it's definitely worth equipping just to protect you and give you that extra defense. Heading into the home stretch here, and next up we're going to talk about is one of the newer ones. This is Spicy Safety. This reduces damage taken from smashing and stabbing attacks. Now, I don't know what any of the insects in the game do. I can only assume what they do. I've never actually tested this one, and I honestly never use this one. It's unlocked by eating 1 spicy shard to unlock phase 1 and 4 spicy shards to unlock phase 2. Now, I guess if you're playing PvP, you'll know what smashing and stabbing damage is, because we know which weapons do smashing and stabbing damage. But the game doesn't tell you what each of the insects do. At least it doesn't right now. Hopefully in the future it will. I'm assuming the stabbing damage will be from the antlions, it will be from spiders, or they could be even smashing. I don't know. Do all the from the attacks I've seen, most of the I guess mosquitoes and bees do stabbing. Maybe it protects you against all the different types of insect attacks. I'll probably have to test it in the future just to see how much damage reduction it does. But right now I just never use this. If you can perfect block, if you just have a shield, or honestly, the game right now, especially on medium mode, it's super easy to kill everything before it can even come close to killing you. So for me, I would just plop it down here. I'm going to put it under I think I had it under C, right? Yeah. Put it under C. I'll do some more testing on this. Let me know if you've used it down in the comments to see if it's actually better than that. But I pretty much never use it. I unlocked it, and I don't remember ever equipping it, even to try it out. Third from last is going to be Mom's Jeans. This gives you a chance to spawn in friendly spiderlings that will attack you, that'll attack enemies for you. So they're not 100% guaranteed to spawn in, and this is unlocked by killing the Hedge Broodmother. Also of note is, if you get in the way, the spiderlings can actually attack you by mistake. Now, spiderlings don't do a ton of damage. The only time I never used this, honestly. I tried it out a little bit and never used it. The only time I've heard anyone say that they thought it was like useful would be when fighting antlions. If you're fighting antlions and it actually spawns the spiderlings in, the antlions will get distracted and attack the spiderlings instead of you. So if you're fighting the ones that are down in the pit and the spiderlings are running all over the place, the antlion might not be able, it's going to stop focusing you and try to hit them and keep missing them, and then you can easily kill them. But for me, I don't really have trouble killing the antlions anymore, so to me, Mom's Jeans is just not that useful. I'm going to put it down here. I'm going to probably put it as the bottom C. Let me know if there's any situations you use this in that I might want to, that I should test out and try just to see if it's actually useful. Our penultimate mutation is going to be Mithridatism. This is one that I use pretty much all the time. This grants immunity to poison, and you have to unlock it by killing 5 wolf spiders. I would put it under S, except for the fact that I don't use it 100% of the time. I use it probably 75% of the time, but if I'm in a situation where I know I'm not going to run into a wolf spider, then I'm not going to equip it. Honestly, at this point in medium mode, as I've done all the current content in the game, I probably shouldn't really use it anymore either, because even if a wolf spider hits me, which they usually don't, because if you have the Antlion Greatsword level 7, I have a level 7 Spicy Greatsword using Coup de Grace, I can kill the wolf spiders in 2 to 4 hits. 4 is going to be worst case. I can go under the oak tree and kill the 2 that are in there, usually before either one of them even hits me. So even if I don't have Mithridatism on, if you perfect block, you're not going to get poisoned. And if you kill them before they even attack you, you're not going to get poisoned. So before that, obviously, I would definitely recommend, as soon as you get it, unlocking it and using it all the time. Specifically, if you don't know where all the wolf spiders are, where they usually roam. If you're wandering around at night, I would definitely recommend using it. I'm going to give it an A, though, because it is super useful. If you're not prepared and a wolf spider hits you and you get poisoned and you don't have smoothies or bandages to heal you, you will end up dying pretty quickly from the poison, especially early on medium or low mode. They will usually kill you in 1 or 2 hits. If they hit you and you get that poison, you have pretty much no chance of surviving it unless you run away and end up healing with a smoothie that gives you a huge healing buff. Last but not least is going to be Truffle Tussle. This is an unarmed attacks have a chance to create a fungal explosion damaging anything in its radius. You get this by killing the infected ladybug in the Haze Lab. This thing does a lot of damage. Unfortunately, it is a random chance of proccing. From what I've seen, it's maybe 10% of the time, 10 to 20% of the time. So it's not very frequent, and you can only get it by using your bare hands, which is pretty much never. Now, because it does so much damage, I'm going to put it down here at the bottom of the C category. But until I don't really ever use this, honestly. If you use barehanded combat for some reason, make sure you use Little Fist and Truffle Tussle. If in one of the future updates they add boxing gloves or some other unarmed weapons that you can use that buff these things, I would recommend using it. If somehow they make it where Truffle Tussle can be procced using other weapons, I would use it, because it does do a lot of damage, and it will end up, you can do, I think it does a lot of damage from what I've seen. It's equivalent to doing like hitting something with a Splat Burst or Brat Burst. So it does do a lot of damage. Unfortunately, it doesn't proc that often. That's my tier list for all the current mutations in Grounded. I'll leave a link for the tier maker template in the description down below. If you want to make your own and share, feel free to do so on my Discord in the Grounded General Chat channel. There's a link for my Discord down below as well. If you found this video helpful, make sure to click the like button and consider subscribing for more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.